Hey there, welcome to Contracts and Chaos. My name's Alyssa.
And I'm Brenna, and we're here to tell you that you are not alone in the mayhem of this real estate industry.
We're keeping it real and sharing our stories, strategies, and successes in today's real estate world.
So come join us every Tuesday while we talk contracts and chaos.
I'm pooped. My eyes are itchy.
And we're going to talk about it. We are going to talk about it. I can't wait to hear everything that you dug into there.
Awesome. It was very much worth it. I'm very glad I went, but we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about that
stay tuned because that's coming.
Yes.
But she has to rest up and relax.
Like,
so we are going to instead we are going to instead talk a little bit more about that dry, gross stuff about residential form changes in North Carolina. This one, again, we did one last week for North Carolina agents, and this one is again. But I feel like if you're in any state in real estate, check your forms, because this year, with everything that's been going on with the NAR settlement and everything like that, I feel like there are massive changes throughout the entire industry. So these forms may not be specific to your state, but there are changes that you should probably, so this could be like your little heads up. Oh, hey, let me check my state board for our new and updated forms, because we have how many changes?
What did you say, 27 form changes? All right, so the first form on the list, if you're in North Carolina, and sorry guys if you're out of state, but again, check your forms in your state. These are what pertain to us. I also need to go and check the South Carolina forms too. The first form is the NAR. I guess it's just, sorry, I'm reading this wrong. The first form is is the offer to purchase and contract. There's 4 changes coming to this. There's some check boxes. There's language that's been changing. The one that stuck out to me, they made some changes to emphasize that it's the buyer's burden to establish a violation of governmental compliance and the buyer's duty to promptly notify the seller. So again, this is what's the fancy word for buyer beware?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say, buyer beware state. And all that means is and it's hard. I'm working with a lot of relocation clients too in different states. Like, the seller has to provide documentation, inspections, like this house passes, it's ready to go. North Carolina's not like that. If the seller doesn't, know for sure that there's a hole in the roof, they don't have to tell you anything.
Right.
And it is up to the buyer, everything, all of that investigating. And I said that so weirdly. Oh my God, investigating.
You were like, I'm not going to be the one that people say is monotone.
Falls to the responsibility of the buyer. What you have to ask the questions. You have to find out the things that are important to you. And so last year they made a change that included is this home in, governmental compliance violation, meaning were permits pulled when you had anything done and things like that. And if the seller, like I said, if the work was done 20 years ago before the seller owned the house, they have no idea.
Right.
And sometimes the county doesn't hold permits very long, which is ridiculous. This is just saying that it's up to the buyer. If that's important to them, they have to find that out. The good news is I've never had, knock on wood, I've never had a buyer not be able to get loan approval based on permit status.
Same. I've had it for other things that they've tried to deny it on, which are silly, but it ended up working in the long run.
The important one to me, the big change for me, is the make more certainty around the due diligence period, the date or the number of days, and how they filled that out, because in, again, North Carolina, we are risking that money due diligence wise. Once that inspection period's up and they decide to walk away, that money is gone. We need a lot of clarity about that date and time of what's happening, because I've seen it before where we write a specific date for due diligence, say July 15th, in for the end of our inspection period, but we did that in, June 22nd, so it gave us 3 weeks. But you recently had an offer that you held on to for a few days before you guys negotiated. And I don't know if you ended up changing that due diligence date, but it does affect things, because if it takes 3 or 4 days for a seller to make a decision, that just cuts down on that timeline.
Right.
So if you can write in 21 days from effective date, meaning once everybody's signed and we're under contract, I think that helps out.
Yeah, and I've done that before without this change. I've done that for my clients and written in because we
Mm-hmm.
knew like this is going to take a couple days. Um and or like yeah, or I would put TBD and in the email say we know your clients are out of town because you know whatever we've discussed this. Would they agree to the rest of the terms and then we can figure out these dates to make it work for everyone. I have an offer.
Yep.
Okay, off the computer. No. She just closed out
All
my
right.
window.
Second form
Um
change is the guidelines for completing the offer to purchase and contract, which isn't something that we fill out, but it added new information about, well, a couple of different things, but specifically the seller's responsibility to disconnect and unpair and release the smart devices and personal,
yes.
stuff that's connected to the
I
houses.
love
Like,
this.
that is good.
I noticed this
Good for
in,
sure.
I was using the forms the other day for something, and I was like, I love that they put this in here. I love it because I can
hmm
say it 100 times, 100 times, and yeah, I love that it's in here where it's like, here it is, like it has to be disconnected. Um,
Yep. The next change was the additional provisions addendum, and I guess there was an issue with people trying to use it with the vacant land offer to purchase, which now they've just added the language in there that you can use it.
right,
And then it says in order to indicate when the seller must complete clearing the property for septic tests and inspections. So that's also like we use the additional provisions addendum
for
a
everything.
lot in residential. So them making that note that yeah, you can use it for vacant land too, I think was helpful. Same thing with the agreement to amend. The next one, the 4T, adding a buyer to a purchase contract, which you like the number of initials that you have to add through the offer if you go back in and add a name to it is just absurd. So
Yeah,
I think that was a good change too.
yeah, I agree because sometimes like I have one coming up. Hopefully, I don't want to jinx this. The husband's going to surprise the wife by submitting an offer on her dream house. Like we're
Oh,
approaching an off
fun.
market property that they had seen years ago. She still wants it, and I have to write the offer with just him because I can't get her to sign a secret offer. Like
Mm-hmm.
I know, like I'm okay with that. I know she wants this house, so I'm not like, oh, I don't know, but I'm gonna have to add her name after. So that's
Mm-hmm.
great. The next one I'm obsessed with this new form. Guys, they are adding
Okay.
this form. I don't know if,
Yeah, this isn't a change. This is a new form
right.
that's coming out.
And I don't know if you guys have ever done or handled an estate. They can be messy. But this is Form 10T, the estate property flow chart. So often like we'll end up calling the hotline to get information about how to handle estates. Or like
Mm-hmm.
I when I have one with an estate, I specifically say, hey, we're gonna use this attorney because they do estates and real estate. And so I know they'll
Mm-hmm.
guide us through this. But this is a flow chart that literally says start here. And it's yes, no. And then it's yes, no. Or it's with closed. Like, love this to help you figure out how to flow through an estate. Now, obviously, still call the legal hotline if you have questions that this doesn't cover. But I just think this was to me, this is a project manager or a um someone who's looking at the the state's use of time and they were like, whoa, we're spending way too much time answering this question for people.
Yeah,
We just need to,
tracking down
right, like
who.
we
Yeah,
need to offer at least
insane.
this to, cut the amount of time we're spending on the phone. But it's beautiful. And then there's like a sheet that goes with it that's um important information about the flowchart. Like it's a beautiful form. I'm really excited about this one because I think it's going to help agents answer a lot of questions and move through things without having to bring the attorney in right away. I'm really excited
Mm-hmm.
about that one. Okay, so the next one, because we wanted this to be a quickie, and where are we time wise? We're already at
Yeah, here
19
we are
minutes.
talking
Uh,
still.
so they've added some guidelines for completing the offer to purchase and contract. Um,
Yeah,
8.2 and
just including those
3.2.
two changes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
those are just the changes that we just talked
yeah,
about with adding the 3-day right and stuff. It's just they implemented it into the guidelines
yeah, and
form as well.
that one where we said paragraph 8H, the change there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. The exclusive right to sell listing agreement. Oy vey. They added language, obviously because of the NAR settlement, to make it clear that the broker compensation is fully negotiable, not set by law, and is determined by each broker and firm individually. They also added language to require the client's consent if compensation is offered that is more than agreed to by the client in the agency contract. Oy vey. It should also be noted that
Yikes.
the answer no can be part of any negotiation. So that
Mm-hmm.
they're permitted. Oy vey, there's so much, guys. Make sure you're reading this one.
Yeah.
There's just a
Uh-huh.
lot
Yeah.
here.
It says that. Yeah, so dig into this one because obviously a disclosure on there says firms are strongly encouraged to discuss their compensation policies with their own lawyer to ensure compliance because you can't have a compensation policy.
Right,
You know what I mean? Like that's the point of this whole settlement. Like you can't make we only do this.
right.
I mean, if that's what you do for your own personal business, great. And if that knocks you out of and I mean it happens to me, I don't list houses for
Nope.
XYZ%. I don't do it.
If I do,
So that
it's
just checks me off people's
right.
list.
Like I'm not doing that. The one that I think that my favorite change on this, because I think this is what spurred this whole situation. There's
Hmm.
now an initial line added for the seller to affirm that they understand that the cooperating compensation is not required.
Then they added check boxes for regarding wetlands or other water issues because they are often material facts that the listing agent needs to know.
Yes. Yep.
It's just a risk management one, a checkbox to see if the seller is working with a relocation company.
Yep. Which
I
is
think that's it on
interesting.
that one.
That's an interesting ad for me. I
Hmm.
wonder if there were a lot of issues with people not paying commissions to relocation companies. I wonder if that's why that was
Mm,
added.
I wonder.
It's like you
Yeah.
always wonder
And then
why like the lawnmower has the warning of like don't stick your hand in the chute. Like did someone really
yes,
need that?
somebody had to do
But there's
that. Yeah,
guaranteed there was
exactly.
a lawsuit about it.
Exactly. This is listen, I love this next one. The seller estimated net sheet. I use this sheet all of the time. And they added edits to include the settlement date and due diligence fee in the calculations. So the number of and I go over each closing disclosure with my clients, right? But every time we have they're like, "Oh, well that should be more." I'm like, "You already received that
Right,
$2,000
right.
when we went under contract." Like they're like, "Well, why is that a deduction?" Because you've already received it.
And
They're not going to give it to you
you know
twice.
what's funny?
You've received it.
I've never used the official state form for this. I have an Excel spreadsheet because it calculates it automatically for me. But that's a
So does the thing.
oh, well, the form I'm pulling up on the website is a PDF.
Oh, well, I use zip forms. So I
Oh,
can
okay.
type in all the stuff on zip forms and it does all the math for
I'm
me.
gonna
Even like the commission percentage and it'll automatically, the part where it says like 1 per 500 or whatever, it automatically fills that amount in. It's just easy peasy.
huh. I'm gonna have to remember that. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I just use an Excel one that I think I bought from Elevated Agent, and it's all um yeah, it's
Automatic.
all automatic. But I like that this puts in the due diligence because that is like I kind of do a large overview of like, okay, here's, but this is great for when we get closer where they're like, what is the number actually? Like, if I wanted specific for that offer, which I usually do, I use
Mm-hmm.
mine more for like when we're listing to be like, okay, here's the approximates. Like, if we were to list
Yeah.
here and get full price, but if say we came in five under, like, let's look at if we have to hit a specific number, that lets me know I can't take an
Let's
offer
play
less
with it.
than. Yeah, let's play with these.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one, where did my form go? Is the vacant land disclosure statement. So this is a new form. We mentioned that it's, added in the listing now, or was it the offer to purchase, that you get to
Yeah.
terminate if you haven't received this in 3 days. This, I like it. I like it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
This is a new form. So it's form 142. It's created to allow the seller to make disclosures regarding vacant land, and it is required form in the T12, which is the offer. So this is asking things like, are there any dwelling structures? Are there any current or past soil evaluation tests? Are there any caves or mine shafts, tunnels, fissures, erosion,
Mm-hmm.
sliding, utility poles or lines, whether they're above or below, any pipelines, any landfills. Like, was this previously a landfill? Is it currently? Is it illegally a landfill? But if there's rivers, lakes, ponds, if there was a well, like this would have come into. I had a lot that used to have a well on it and had previously been perked 30 years ago, but nobody knew where anything was anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to say,
Yeah.
like, if this were in play at that time, we would have had to say yes. Like, are there there's survey questions? Like, this form is gorgeous. I'm in love with it because so many.
I'm excited for the closing guidelines for the seller. The Form 170, that's a new one. And it's just like regular everyday items that, you've got to do as far as part of closing out your home sale. And I think it's just like an easy one sheet checklist for like a lot of people. And I mean, I have a list of things but this is just so.
Yeah. Yeah, my
Thank you.
TC sends
Like
a
that
list.
one. It's an
but-
official state form.
Right. Here's a state form.
Mhm.
Thank you. And this is one
Yeah.
I would give at the time of listing. Like, hey, I'm
Yeah.
going to give this to you now so you know ahead
Mhm.
of time. And then 2 weeks before closing or at the end of due diligence, I'm going to give it to you again to make sure that you've done these things. Because we don't want to get to a
Yep.
final walkthrough. Like, I had my seller this week was like, oh, I'm going to leave the lawnmower, some old tools, the TV in the living room. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. She's like, well, I mean, they're going to want them if they're buying a house. And I was like, let me double check. And he did. Pretty sure he's a first-time home buyer, and it was perfect. He was like, oh, that's like, I really appreciate that. But you can't just leave
But
stuff.
a lot of times.
The
Right.
buyer doesn't want your stuff, whether or not you think it's helpful.
Mhm.
The buyer agency agreement. Okay.
Whoop, whoop.
Right. So this is for the exclusive one because there's also a non-exclusive,
Mhm.
which we're definitely going to talk about that at comparing the two. I know we mentioned it last week. I think I'm going to add that to the list for the next couple weeks. So they added the preamble was broken up for easier reading. Okay. And then the NAR settlement edit. So they make clear that the buyer and the buyer agent have agreed upon to compensation. You never should have been saying this before, but you can no longer say it that they don't have to pay you. You shouldn't have been saying it
Right.
when, before the settlement because and maybe it's different in different states, but our agency agreement says if the seller's not paying it, it's the buyer's job. So and that's one of the things I use the net sheet for my buyers too, to say, okay, if we're at this price point and the sellers aren't offering, like, here's the math, here's the different amounts. So you guys know the additional cash you're going to have to bring to the table. Let's talk about this
Yep.
now before we get in that situation.
Yeah. The note that they put in here, it says like changes also adopted here to indicate that buyer agent services are not free. They are fully negotiable, but not set by law.
Yes, we love
Because
it.
like it's a conversation. We love that. And then same thing with the listing agreement. It says in addition that it should be noted that the answer no can be part of any negotiation. No is a full sentence, just like in real life. No.
Yep.
It's a whole sentence. That's it.
Okay, and it's the same thing with the non-exclusive agency agreement.
Yep, same changes.
Same change
Yep.
there. The cooperating compensation agreement. Oy.
Yes. And now listen, I've used this several times because I am somebody that I prospect for sale by owners for listings. So I reach out to them for buyers too. So I have used the previous cooperating compensation agreement, and it's not that difficult, your name, your buyer client's name, the seller's name, you agree to pay me XYZ, like it's really not that
Right.
difficult.
And it makes very clear, like, there's not one right way to document cooperating compensation. This form will just be one tool used. So just remember that. Also, maybe this is
Well, yeah, because right now in our MLS, we can see what the seller is offering for compensation, right? If we print out that MLS sheet when we go under contract, it states on there what we're getting paid. If they do make the changes that it's not going to be like public knowledge anymore, like I think that you should implement this form every offer.
But yes, and they're saying like a compensation is going to be on all the other forms we've talked about too. This is an additional one to be used in certain situations. this is one I would look at closely, guys. Look at the changes because there's new one. They've renamed it. It's now the Cooperating Compensation Agreement. It's no longer called
Yep.
the Confirmation of Compensation Agency and
Yep.
Appointment. Um, but I would look at this one closely because it's going to look different and it's a very important form because this is something I feel like we're going to, if we don't have well-informed sellers, this is one we're going to have to deal with a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
get comfortable with that one.
The next two, the termination of contract, and this goes for the standard 2T, the residential offer to purchase, and the 12T, which is the lot and land offer to purchase. I think this is a great change. I was just talking to another agent a couple of weeks ago where they were in due diligence. And again, this is North Carolina specific because a buyer can walk away here at any time for any reason whatsoever. They lose their due diligence money, but they can get their earnest money back if it's before the end of due diligence. Right?
Right.
This change says that they've made edits on page 2 to make clear that the seller is not agreeing to the buyer's reason for terminating. It's an important edit that will help sellers feel more comfortable releasing the earnest money deposit, even if they disagree with the buyer's stated position for terminating the contract. Because again, you could say, you know what, I drove by the house this morning and had a really funny feeling. I don't want to buy the house anymore. And you could walk away.
Right.
I've had it happen. And the seller's like, what? That makes no sense. No, I'm not signing this termination. And they don't have to sign the termination to release the earnest money because you can provide the offer to purchase. It's messy, but you can get it done. So them being like, yeah, sure, like they're walking away, that's fine. Or no, I don't agree, but here's my signature. They still get the earnest money back. And I think that that's just like, it doesn't change anything, but the sellers have like the illusion of control with being like, no, I don't agree.
Right. And that's what I was just going to say. I'm like, this is silly. This is literally just to make
it's an
sellers feel
illusion.
better to say,
It's a
I don't agree with you, but
Yep.
fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay,
Yeah,
Karen.
it's a tantrum form, but it's fine. It's fine because that's all it is the illusion of control.
Right.
Because the buyer can terminate whether or not the seller agrees to it.
Right, because there's literally a box.
That's why it's called unilateral decision. You know what I mean?
Right, because literally the last option on the form for buyer's reasons says buyer gives us notice of termination after the expiration of the due diligence period without providing a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to. We don't have to give a reason.
Termination of agency agreement. They've just added something in there to protect the agent if expense reimbursement is not in fact received at the time of termination. And this only goes if you have, expenses written into your listing agreement or your buyer, you know what I mean? If you don't write anything in there and then, they're like, listen, found somebody that we like to work with better, you're out of luck. You can't be like, oh, but I spent $400 in gas and I actually like did a lot of pictures for your listing. Like, like you either agree to it up front or you lose out if they walk away.
Yep, exactly. So, I love this one. Love this line because I build that in. Like, I have an amount that's set to keep me covered because usually if we get to that point, it's I've put a lot of time and money into it. So I've never had to enforce it yet, but I do like that this does do that. The referral agreement. Interesting, I'll be honest. I didn't know we had a state form for this. I've always just used my firm specific form. But I like that this is here. And they've changed some phrasing to make it easier to understand who's getting paid when. Like when when the referral fee is earned and then when it's due and payable. So I like it. I think it's nice and crisp and clear. I may even lean into using this one more than our firms because I think the phrasing on our firm form is I like this one. I think it's clearer. Anyway, the
professional services disclosure. This is just a list, like literally a list of every inspection I think you could probably get done as far as,
for a purchase.
Home inspection, radon, HVAC, pool, spa, you know what I mean? So they just added a sewer inspection
Right.
to that list.
Like it's an
I think that's
option.
great too.
Because I think that's,
Mhm.
especially in aging towns, that's something people are ordering more to make sure, like, okay, we're not going to have an issue, right?
Mhm.
Disclosure of compensation. I've, this is adding language to indicate that the buyer is both acknowledging and consenting to the compensation stated in the form. So this is
Yep.
literally just reiterates what's in your agency agreement. Um,
Mhm.
that's it. It's just a secondary form for that, which we have a firm specific one, which is awesome. This is a state specific one.
Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah. A good thing this was the end because you're going to hate that. But I think I can mute you in the edit and then we should be great. So, that's it, guys. Our quickie turned into 45 minutes. If only they all worked like that. And we will see you next week. We just finished another episode of Contracts and Chaos, but believe me, the chaos does not stop here. So check out the show notes for our email address and where to follow us on socials, and we will see you next week.